Our non-local crew members include Lydia Mullen. She's the managing editor of Sail Magazine, and I think folks from Jamestown will. And if you attended the Ocean Race focus event that we put on, that was the first of our education and safety focus events. Was about the ocean race, and she gave us the presentation that evening. Sam Webster, Cornell University racer and former Mud Rats from Mystic Connecticut Youth Offshore Sailing Program, and Mary Schmidt, 24 graduate of the Mass Maritime Academy, which is Mary's alma mater. So they have taken this presentation. This is one of several. Taken this on the road, sharing their safety precautions and lessons learned with the boating community. So most notably was an intro to the safety at sea course at the Naval Academy in Annapolis. So it's been taken quite seriously. So we are pleased to, Jamestown Yacht Club, pleased to announce Mary and Erin.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us. Our cover slide here, that's Alliance doing one of the, at the start of one of the Ida Lewis distance races, so a few years back. So great pictures by taking a question here. So, all right, a little bit about us. Me, as Cheryl said, I've been sailing since I was a kid. I'm a graduate of Massachusetts Maritime Academy, marine engineering. I did ship out for a little bit, but mostly I've been working for the Navy here in Newport for 39 years, designing weapon systems for submarines. I bought my first boat in 1986. It was an Albin. Here we have Luna here, another Albin. Mine was an Albin Ballad. Bought it in 1986, and I kept it here at Jamestown Boatyard for many years. So my connections go back a lot. Been racing for 25 years, a lot of local kiwi racing, one design experience. I started at the Dart and said, no, I hope it's still like me. Then back in, I guess, 2020, Eric and I used to be, he had a lot more offshore experience than me, but we decided we were a little COVID crazy, decided we wanted to control our own destinies. And for me, from my perspective, I knew that I wanted to do a lot of distance cruising, and there's no better way to learn than to do racing and offshore racing. That there was just a tremendous amount that we had to learn. So that.
So I'm Eric Irwin. I think my first sail was when Mary bought her first boat. So I went sailing for the first time the month before at the Naval Academy. So I'm a Naval Academy class 86 person. It's around that same time frame. Interesting factoid is the Doherty's J-24 Patriot actually was sailing on in Stonington and named Comichon, and then once I figured out all these connections, we put it all together. So I'm a career submarine officer. Spent 3.5 years of my life submerged. I did not submerge again, so lifetime doesn't count. I was done transatlantic race and now 500-meter races. And so Mary, I'll talk. And actually, it was great. 2 weeks ago, went back to Naval Academy for safety at sea, which is really where it started back after the 79 Fastnet tragedy. Alliance has a connection to that race. We'll talk about later. But 40 years to the day, almost from my first safety at sea, and it's a very important. But I'll tell you, it is just a safety at sea is a foundation. It's a beginning point. There's a lot of other efforts you need to take, and we'll talk about that as we go on.
The pictures from the finish of the 2022 Newport Bermuda race, which we completed on Alliance. We came in 4th in our class by 13 seconds. We were corrected over, and Caitlin Nemec was on our crew.
And she took that picture.
And Julia was on our crew in the 2024 race. It's all like always on time for any practice or any Zoom meeting we had. So okay. So Alliance's philosophy, we are all about a Corinthian amateur crew and giving opportunities to people in their age group, the 20-something, the 30-something, get them out there because, doing a race like this, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of time commitment and stuff, but we really want to, enable the younger generation, the Corinthian, the beginners, not the beginner sailors, but the, people who probably haven't done a lot of offshore to do it. And we're very much about mixed gender. For this race, we had the 2024 race, we had 5 men and 4 women. 4 of us were a little bit north of 40, good at that. And five were less than 35. So that's what we're all about. Obviously, look good, have fun, place well was our motto. So about J122 Alliance, she's a J-boat. You guys are all familiar with it's an asymmetrical boat. If you're familiar with the 105s and 109s, it's very similar, just a little bit bigger. It has a sprit, fractional rig. Big difference. It's got a German main sheet for the main, but 40-foot boat. Designed here in Connecticut by Rob Johnstone, built in France. All the 122s were built in France and brought over here. So everyone can kind of figure a lot of the reason for the name was Alliance. We're a partnership, owned the boat together, but there's a lot of history behind it. Alliance, USS Alliance was a Continental Navy 36-gun sailing frigate that was built in Merrimack, Massachusetts. Interesting enough, that's where I grew up. That's why I had a Boston accent, and I learned to sail on the Merrimack River. So, named for a treaty with France, so it kind of ties in the boat being built in France. Won the last battle of the Revolutionary War. And there's a little bit of tie back with Eric in that there was a Naval Academy Alliance that was in the Fastnet race, survived the Fastnet race, and went on to win the transatlantic race that year. So lots of little, more than just that it's a partnership for the name Alliance. So we bought the boat in 2020. Some of the bigger races we did were the Bermuda in 2022. We had an amazing start. That's when I was on Castle Hill, but we just had the best start. We were the only boat in our class reefed, and we just killed it out of the bay.
We're driving too.
I was driving. And Matt Gimple was my drummer. So, you know, we won 4th in class. We got to go to the governor's mansion. And then in 2023, we did the Annapolis to Newport race, which was a very gnarly race. We had a lot of bad weather. And we did the Marble to Halifax race. And we did a bunch of that little picture up there. All of you that are, I think it's Silvo, that's the Annapolis to Newport weather. So you can see what I mean on the nose. But there's Julia in the fog. So yeah, we did a lot of, and then a lot of local stuff. I did a Lewis distance race, Sam Weatherall, which is a great race out of Essex Yacht Club down in Connecticut. So safety is fundamental. With our, you know, we went out, we practiced, we did everything we were supposed to. We did, we deployed the drove for emergency steering. We deployed our storm sails, our life sling. Everybody had to go out to overnight practices, had to deploy all the safety equipment, had to understand everything. I mean, we did all briefings about, everyone had to understand weather navigation. This little one just shows all the characteristics of lights approaching Bermuda. So everyone had to understand all that. So then safety of the boat is fundamental. We got the boat, we brought it up to International Marine in Bristol. You know, George has been working on J-boats. He's a little bit older than us, working on his J-boat since he was in his teens, had everything, the boat's of 2007, had everything done to that boat as far as, you know, a little bit of the repairs on the keel and any wet core, any of that. We had the rudder, last year we had the rudder dropped and the rudder bearing replaced, the lower and the upper bearing replaced. We had the standing rigging replaced. We got our running rigging from Jonathan. We replaced lifelines, update, you know, we did a lot of work. Boat, so the people in the boat were all in phenomenal condition. Couldn't be better. Always keep learning. I mean, we were all about learning. We had monthly Zoom calls. We gave information for them all. They had to learn, they had to study. Things like there's a leadership thing that was put out by the Storm Trysail Club. Storm Trysail Club puts out a lot of good videos. CCA puts out a lot of good videos. All this stuff is available on YouTube to look. Modern Marine Weather is my Bible. I gave it to Julia, and then mine sank with Alliance, and then she got me one. So Eric and I both took wilderness offshore medicine. Eric actually took it twice. Really intensive 3-day medicine course. We had to, you know, sew pig's feet and give each other injections and stuff like that. So just a lot of learning. Prior to it, and Eric would quiz people. So Offshore racing, weather, and communications. We didn't have Starlink back. We didn't have Starlink. Well, we kind of did in 24, but we had Iridium Go, predict wind, which you can't use for routing during the race. But the big thing is everyone had to know how to use everything. Our satellite communications, our VHF, VHF these days are complicated, with the TSC function, but that was very important for our boat, that TSC function. Everyone had to know how to use it. Marcus was our navigator first couple of years, then that's me. And if you can see right under our VHF, everyone asked me how, or right here, how am I going to? Everyone asked me how we're so calm. Well, that little placard there, you can get one from the Coast Guard, but I copied it and customized it with our MMSI and our call sign and how many people on board and all that information and posted it right there. So, at the heat of the moment, I didn't have to depend upon my memory, I could read it. So, and it gave instructions on how to use the DSC digital selective calling button because you have to hold it down for like 5-6 seconds. And, when you, the heat of the moment, you may just press it and think it's gone and it really hasn't. So, make sure everyone knows how to use all the communication equipment. Okay,
So, so kind of the theme of the next part is how are you going to be ready for the unexpected? I mean, we're talking about offshore, but it can happen in the bay, right? There was a case this past, I think, late summer, early fall, in race in Essex, where off of Plum Gut, a boat suddenly sank of a leak that they didn't know about in minutes, right? So it can happen to you. So how do you know the status of your boat, status of your equipment? Does your crew know what to do? Those are all important things. And in my career, doing what I do in the Navy, Mary's experience when we came together with the plan for buying this boat, part of it was we needed to learn how to be offshore skippers because now we're going to be responsible for this crew. And so part of that was the plan for the boat, the crew preparations, and everything we did do. And part of that's my experience is good and mostly bad. And other boats that I had raced on in preparations that's where it goes back. Let's control our own destiny. Let's do it the way we want to do it. And that was our plan. So part of that all gets to trust. Trust in your boat, but also tell you, you could be that boat responding to somebody else. So we now entrusted our lives to another boat. And so there were some good experiences you'll hear about and some bad ones you may not hear.
okay, so I can't. Alice took this picture. You all know Alice. She's out there every Tuesday night taking pictures. So to see, I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. So and this is the big changes past year, which I was a little pushed back a little bit because it gets a little congested. All these yahoos out there bunch up this shore. I mean, I'm familiar enough with the rules and the environment, but it turned out to all be successful is great. And kind of see faded is Castle Hill Lights. So the previous picture Mary showed is that great start at Castle Hill. This one we're about a mile into the race, and last great picture of the lights.
Still a great start, though.
Still, it was a great start. We had a great start this year. So tell you about the boats. So obviously, talk about Alliance, Crew and I, which we've been yeah, and the key thing, open stern. We'll talk about that feature. Say again. Oh yeah, and as Mary kind of talked about with the crew experiences in those workup races, the core crew on Alliance for this race had over 1,000 miles together, most about 1,500 miles together. And if you go in these races, we actually made changes along the way. It's like, yeah, that person is not going to work out for us. And you have to have that hard conversation because they're not physically able or so forth. So you got to make those changes, and you have to have that diversity. I mean, we had age diversity. Part of that is like Julia loves and Kate loves going up on the bow. We love that youthful enthusiasm. Out there in the waves. So you have to have that diversity of physical fitness, which is very important, and skill sets and so forth as you move forward. So this is Kaylee. This is we saw him at the start. We briefly seen him in a previous Formula Halifax. Um, Interesting thing that Eddie, what was Eddie's question again, Julia?
What do you have on board? Is it Guinness or Jamestown?
Yeah.
What do you drink? It is a heart.
Sorry.
Right, yeah.
You know what the answer was? Heineken. Unfortunately, we find out that they do drink Heineken on their boat. So got to know them well later on. We didn't know that at this point, but they had, Jim, the skipper, had put together a crew. It was him and two of his um, mass buddies, but he brought a crew of four who we'll talk about a little bit later, but are absolute heroes in their skill sets that he had brought aboard, very key in the rescue and so forth. Our buddy boat banter, so there's a previous picture of Matt Gimple. He was my go-to, true afterguard watch captain in the first Bermuda race. Coast Guard Cutterman. They now have their own boat banter. This is them at the start with Crew 9. They were well prepared, well experienced, and interesting. They followed some of the protocols we did in preparation with Zoom calls and preparations and so forth. So, very strong relationship with that boat, and we'll talk about them and our experience here in a few. So, the conditions. So, about 36 hours into the race. It's almost 3 a.m. in the morning. We had 4 on deck, including Julia, who was tethered. So our standard protocol was you always wore life jackets, with rare exceptions, as approved by either Mary or I. You typically, we kind of migrated over time, and you just wear your tether around your waist during the day so that you can just wear it at night. It's always there. You didn't have to go find it sometime when shit hit the fan, so to speak. Full moon, we had entered the Gulf Stream about 5 hours before. There was no squalls expected. We're just kind of bouncing along. So we're on a reach, so to speak, with that true wind angle 80 to 90 and a medium heavy jib, first reef in. And actually, I have a hard time sleeping as person in charge. And then I'd actually, as Julia and Mary know, I tend to sleep on deck sometimes if I'm a little nervous about conditions, just to be ready. I had actually migrated down the nav station, and then I finally was in my skivvies and a shirt, laying on the deck because the bunks were full. Mary's in the bunk. So we're making about 8 knots through the water. So we're in this Gulf Stream eddy, which we'll show in a moment. So we're making about 12 knots over the ground. You're steaming towards Bermuda, and I would assess the conditions weren't excessively challenging. So that's kind of how I was able to relax, and I had probably just fall asleep when it happened.
Yeah, and if you read Lydia's article, who was on the helm at the time, she was just enjoying riding the waves, surfing up and down the waves. She just kept, we usually rotate every half an hour. She could just say, all right, 10 more minutes, 10 more minutes. She just was loving it and doing fine and wanting to stay on the helm.
So then, bam! I mean, it was literally, I thought the rig was gone. It was a huge metallic noise. Stood up, I looked at, and then the crew back there, so Bill Meller and Lydia, they're all looking down at the rudder. So first off, where that little star is, that's where we were in that Gulf Stream meander. So the Gulf Stream kind of meanders around. So we want to take advantage of that to make BMG to Bermuda. So there was, fortunately, also meant a lot of boats were near us, which was good. And the picture to the right is looking from the rudder post aft, because the orient is. So I put my head in over here about 90 seconds into the event to look at the forward end of the lower rudder bearing, which is below here. But this is about 40 minutes into it. We actually took a picture before we left, or video, which you'll see in a moment. This is a steering quadrant arm for the autopilot, and this is actually the upper rudder bearing. The upper rudder bearing should be about nearly a foot higher than that, and you see it's fully intact with shards of fiberglass. And when the five of us below woke up, we actually thought we had a fire because you smelled this distinct burning fiberglass smell, and so it just the clang, rudder, smell, and I just woke up. So that's kind of the conditions of my mind is in. And I was pretty fatigued at the time because 36-hour race, I probably slept 20 minutes up to that point. So this is what we're dealing with.
Yeah. So, we first talked to Crystal Yacht Club, and someone asked us if we hit something on the bottom, which is why I then went and looked it up, and we were at 2.5 miles deep in water, and well offshore, but that's. Also asked, did some of you go try to recover the boat? Well, again, ruling the Gulf Stream at Portland's, and it's going where it's gonna go, and we're 260 miles offshore, so neither of those.
So the other thing before you leave this, so when you think about the Coast Guard, everyone likes, out here, you hear, got a problem, call the Coast Guard, come pick you up, and you go home. Well, we're outside Coast Guard Hilo Rescue Zone, we're more than 200 miles offshore. So the key thing here is we're really reliant on the herd, the other boats, or our pickup. So very important point to think about in this situation. Very different than 2 other situations that also occurred related to the meteors. So this is about 40 minutes into it before we left the boat. We had time to take the GoPro camera. There's a Sam looking down in the rudder compartment, and you'll see the rudder basically pivoting around its lower point. It's rocking there,
You
right?
can see all the water.
So the rudder, it actually, the housing for the bearing, where it sits in the hull, it actually ripped forward, and then I think in that kind of auguring motion dropped down because the flooding rate actually went up over time. And that was like, why do we keep getting more water? Based on compared to when I first put my eyes on it, was distinctly different.
Okay, so the rudder going like this down where the lower bearing was connected, just like cracked the whole hull in front of the lower rudder bearing. Oops.
Okay, so this timeline, so 0248 is, we got some timestamps on that for when it happened. Very quickly did a damage assessment, and I will tell you, I think I recognized in that first 2 minutes, but I didn't fully internalize that we're mortally wounded. Because how can you fix that problem? We actually had a collision map. Collision maps are really only good forward of the keel. That post moving around with that quadrant was a hazard, right? There's no way to stabilize that. So our first action then was to get these pumps out. So we had a 1,000-gallon-per-hour pump, which was, I guess, my idea when we bought the boat because we're double handing and based on Bill Neller's experience. The case that we ever had a problem short-handed, you don't want to be manning the 25-gallon-per-minute pump. You want to get something automatically going. So we had one that we just plugged into a 9-volt DC outlet. You put it in the bilge. It had a non-collapsible hose that was going over topside. Had that going pretty quickly. That was my first directed action after Mary and I convinced about doing a Mayday call. So quickly, Mary got the communications going. There was a DSC call topside, which the Lodex we weren't aware of, the bill had made, which is good. Mary got a DSC call. What?
Explain DSC a little.
Yeah, digital selective calling. So it puts out an alert that says your boat, your location, and the nature of your distress. So it just gives you a little message on your radio. And I will tell you, there is a lack of knowledge amongst boaters. Did you hear that noise? And
that same alarm, any boat with VHF distance gets that alarm on their radio.
Yeah.
So that's the real key. Any boat within, and it's broadcasting your MMSI, your nature of your distress, which you can actually choose in a menu. So that's why it's very important to know how to use your VHF.
And then also, if you're the recipient of it, make sure you can look at the little screen, like, what does that mean? Because are you now the responder to somebody else? So we got the pumps going. We actually carried we in support of the Marble of Halifax, which has a world safety requirements, you need more than 3,000 gallon per hour pumping capability. Mary found a straight kit, it was in a box, had this pump, hooked up 2 alligator clips to the battery, and it had this collapsible hose, which we'll talk about maybe later. So also got that going about 10 to 15 minutes into the casualty. But as we said here, 20 minutes plus into it, water level continued to rise. So you do have pumping losses, and Mary Schmidt, our youngest, she was trying to keep the hoses on king, keep the water flowing, but water level continued to rise. So about 30 minutes into it, I began to recognize, like, okay, what's next? Mary's in communication. There's a boat still down below. You got these 2 boats responding, Kaylee and Banter. And then in my mind, I'm like, well, how do I get my people to that boat? Because you're not going to put 2 boats together side by side. And safety at sea doesn't really teach you about lifeboat transfers. And that's a point where they're going to, I think, start focusing on, because there's some technique, some risk with that you got to think about when you're talking to. So at 3:40, we finally executed the abandoned ship procedure. One thing that I don't think we really pointed out early on, we actually had I call it the Alliance standing plans, about a page of philosophy of duties, responsibilities of person in charge, watch captains, general routines, just philosophical, just to provide a standard. So you step aboard, read this, you understand who we are, what's expected. Then we also had, a checklist for procedures. Rig goes down, you hold the boat, need to abandon ship, steering. So we executed that piece, and then at 4:06 we completed a life raft transfer to Kaylee.
So during this, Julia and Lydia got the ship down pretty quickly after hands on deck, and we did call hove to, but we didn't have steering, so we really couldn't steer us to heave to. But the boat turned out, and they had gotten the ship down.
And this is a key point here. How many boats have EPIRB? How many of your EPIRBs have AIS feature on them? You want an EPIRB with AIS. That was critical to our the response that we got. So AIS transmits a signal VHF wise, tells you a position, tells you an MMSI number, so people know where to zone in it. If you just have an EPIRB, it goes up to a satellite, goes to a communication center, they call, hey, your point of contact, hey, we got this EPIRB signal from this boat. Hopefully somebody answers, oh yeah, they're in a Bermuda race. They would call Bermuda race. So there's a delay if you just rely on the EPIRB satellite signal alone. AIS was pretty key in this whole rescue to know where we were. And you need to know how to activate this. Truth be told, Connor, we passed it up. Hey, Connor, activate the EPIRB. It took him about 2 minutes because you never really activate one. You always do you do the test button, but then you're up there at night and there's these little words on there and you're trying to figure out how to push the button, right? That's even though we had talked about it in training, right? You still now when you actually do it and you've never actually pushed it, that's a learning.
And everything happens at night, right? So everyone, you wear your helmet around your neck, on your head, wherever, so that you have to do something at night and you're looking at it, you have your lip.
Yeah. So I just summarized a couple things here. First, I'll tell you pictures. You already saw this picture here. This is about 45 minutes into before we left. So this is come down the companionway, the galleys to the right. Here's the deck to the galley. This is where we hook the pump. So this is the 1,000 gallon pump hose coming up here. You can see it's kind of a corrugated hose pumping. This is the hose from the 3,037 gallon power pump, which is back here, pumping water overboard. One thing you also got to think about, which occurred to the other 2 boats, which had fuel filter issues and ability to run the engine and recharge batteries. Truth be told, I was probably the most conscientious being a submariner of the state of battery charge. Um, we never let it go below 60%. We had 2 house batteries and an engine start battery. I never considered starting the engine. I was just dealing with the problem. I never really subsequently paid attention to the discharge rate of the battery, but I did look before we left that, the water level is below the top of the battery by about this much before we left. So, got to think about energy in this situation. How do you prolong it? But the way our boat was designed from the rudder straight to the engine was the pathway of the water ingress. So the ability even to run the engine would have been questionable beyond the 15-minute point.
So when Eric mentioned the other 2 boats, in case some of you don't know, there were 3 boats that sank in conjunction with the race, 2 during the race and 1 on the return. Gungadin and Solution, all very different, but when he refers, those 2 other boats had fuel filter clogging issues where they couldn't run their engine. So U.S. Sailing will have reports, investigation reports from the Bermuda Race Committee on everything if you want to read about it. But those were when he referenced the other 2 boats.
So we kind of talked about this, it's preparations for success, it's that preparation of boat, preparation of crew. We had both watch cap, even though, we had gone through we were able to self-inspect as a previous race, and we kept ourselves at a pretty high standard. But we had a day, it's a safety day, 2 watch captains, the first task was, there's a checklist, let us know what you find. And so they went through everything. Found one thing I missed, which was good, but that caused them to be familiar where everything was, right? And built their trust. Talked about standing plans already. Safety at sea, 8 of the 9 crew had been to safety at sea. As I said, that is a great foundation. I was talking to somebody earlier today about that, right? But all those other resources from Storm Trysail Club, the CCA, online Zooms, you can you just have to go find it, and you have to get your crew to learn about it, and it helps build that trust because it helped align the crew, particularly since we were spread out from Vista, Connecticut to Boston, right? So getting together in the middle of winter is always a challenge. So Zoom is a great mechanism to help once a month bring the crew together. If you had somebody new, they got to learn that person. So the first night out, you knew who they were, what their experience was, and so forth. Having a response plan, right? So we had a call plan. So as soon as we could, we activated our own call plan. Included the race had their own call plan to notify everybody what happened. Carrying those, we weren't required to carry those emergency water pumps. In the future races, that will be required. But the point there is, know what your boat's pumping capacity is for what you do, right? And make sure it works. Anything else on that? So life raft transfer. So it's kind of our experience. So that beautiful night, bouncing along in beautiful waves with a full moon, now became a challenge for a life raft transfer, right? You're bouncing in 10-foot seas.
You're exaggerating. 6,
whatever.
They were taller than Lydia. Lydia's like 5'3", right?
So
It's grown to 10. Really 6.
Peak to trough, 10 to 12 feet. Average was 6. But it's anything more than 3, I would say, is probably gets to be a little bit different.
Yeah, this awesome.
Yeah.
Like when you're at the bottom, the top is over your.
So we had a 10-person Winslow ultralight. So those of you who are going to look to do offshore racing, you really need to look at the race requirements with respect to your type of life raft you carry and ISO standards. Barry got very smart on that piece. But there's a drogue, which we'll talk about in a moment, and you'll see in a video. You can actually see the drogue right here. There's a factor you got to think about when you're going to pick up a right. Our ditch bag had all the standard required stuff. It's funny. I think Julie actually mentioned, "Hey, should we put our cell phones all in a watertight bag when we leave?" we didn't do that, but in hindsight, after the fact, we did do it. We got everybody's stuff in a dry bag because we have time, fortunately.
This computer got rid of it.
Yeah, that computer got in a dry bag. We actually carried our emergency water. We carried like 10 bricks of 3-gallon, 2.5-gallon water containers. 3 of those are designated for emergency water. We're going somewhere. We didn't know whether they were going south. We didn't know whether they were going north. You know, and we didn't know what their status was, but we know water's important. So we took our 3 of our containers of emergency water with us. We had time, like I said, to grab key things. I actually grabbed a spare life jacket I had because the thing we didn't have in the ditch bag actually was, you're always required to carry like a spare inflator in case one goes off. Well, that's probably where you want it is in your ditch bag. I actually there was a momentary pause where Mary and I were last ones down below, and I said, "Okay, Mary, we got a moment." I said, "What are we forgetting?" So Mary's like, "Well, I got the phone." I said, "Well, the iridium base is right there, so pull the iridium base, put it in the bag, which is required for SATCOMs." I found my shorts and shoes, and my life jacket is down below, and I'm actually, well, I don't know which way I'm going, but I should grab my life foul weather gear. Thank goodness I did that. And then I said, "Oh yeah, I need my car keys." And that's right. I can't use it. But the point there is, you don't know whether you have time or not. Fortunately, we had time. Everyone had a moment to go down and grab their key stuff and put in a bag, and that's pretty key. We turned on as many lights as possible to make sure the boat stood out to those rescue boats, the 2 boats in particular. As we moved along. Anything else on this?
Yeah, so I just want to, hopped in, hopped out. It wasn't that simple, but yeah, it was. Both open stern boats. That's important, right?
Yeah.
So very easy to get in and out of. And Connor and Sam were holding that life raft by like the boarding ladder for dear life. Right. And these pitching seas, the boat moving, the life raft moving, the drogue trying to pull it away from the boat as everyone hopped into it. It went well, but it wasn't just hopped in, hopped out. Then you'll see we have the video next, but and we'll talk after about getting out of the life.
I will tell you, so I replay in my head what happened over and over and over, and being responsible for everybody. If it was going to go wrong, it was going to go getting into or out of the life raft. And I remember we finally migrated, Mary and I migrated topside. We got the main down. Everything was set in the cockpit, ready to go. The water, the ditch bag, the life raft, and I turned to Sam, who's our lead watch captain. I said, "Okay, make sure that the painter is hooked to the boat." So saw him do that. I said, "Launch the life raft," and he gives me this look. I said, "Launch the life raft, throw it in, and pull, just like you trained at safety at sea." And he did that, and you're like, popped up, it went right side, and then you had this little painter line that they had to pull, as Mary said, so there's wind forces against the boat, there's that drug pulling that they had to overcome that to get that life raft back to the boat. It's not like the life raft is like right there, it was over there, you gotta pull it in, and then they had to hold on to it, that ladder, as we were always tethered in on top side, so we disconnected, put it around your waist, and then I would say tumble in is probably a better word. Tumbled into the life raft.
Yeah. And our life raft was of least like a soft case kept right in starboard aft, right under the seat there, starboard aft. It wasn't in a hard case up in the bow or anywhere. It was right there, and it did weigh, so that was easy to get to.
Yeah. So video next.
Sorry, I did put the link isn't the same, so it's going to actually plug YouTube. I hope we're not going to have to see any.
So what you see is, so this is once we get this video rolling, so
It's
you'll
going here. Doesn't seem to be going there. I'm trying to do.
So one of the Haley, one person was responsible for, just like every man overboard is, where's the life raft? Because they had to do 3 passes. So he was able to take that video. So we'll make sure you have the link if you don't we're not able to get it to play here at the moment. Is it playing in the background or?
Can you make it so instead of
So it wasn't playing, so we,
Young IT helps. She's an IT specialist.
playing,
Yeah.
trying to link directly. See, it's playing here, but it won't, it might just be too much data to go over it.
or you're just only sharing your PowerPoint.
Yes.
From the water going back to getting in the life raft was what, 2.5 hours?
No, it was less than an hour. So,
Less than an hour.
so about 50 minutes.
50 minutes, less than an
Yeah. So like I said, it was
We can try.
about 30 minutes. I knew we needed to do something else,
Okay.
which was
Alright, so
Gallons of the pump, must have been 10 gallons.
yeah.
Did you ever figure out what you did?
No, we don't know. So there's a structural report. So there's 3 reviews being done. So currently posted for the 3 boats is the abandoned ship piece on U.S. Sailing. There's a structural investigation at Gungadin and us. We reviewed that report. You know, the report says we likely hit something because if you look at the force calculations of what happened, that's what happened. There's some other incidental things and findings they have. Then I think the 3rd part is communications, mostly from the part that a lot of boats got called on their iridium or sat phones and there was a lack of response. So they're trying to fix that problem. But from our perspective, VHF comms were extremely reliable and good, very key in our rescue. We did have communications back to Joe Cooper. He was on watch that night, but he was trying to sort out who's doing what. But he didn't really need to organize everything because we were self-organized. So once again, it goes back to what's your situation? Are you remote, or are you with the group? And how you respond and stuff.
And so there were a lot of boats. I mean, I'm on the VHF down below. I mean, Kayleen Banter came, but there were a lot of other boats answering our call. You know, and you know, some of them were, you could tell, must have been further away because they were broken up. I don't want to say it was just those 2. You know, the rules you have to not only steamship rules but race rules you have to. But so there were a lot of boats that were contacting us, and yeah. And Joe Cooper, I called. He was back here. I used the satellite phone to call Bermuda Race Ops. That's what Joe was doing the watch for.
And even when we were at Kaylee, right, there were a couple of people who called us.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing is boat owners, if you turn on in your systems and you look at AIS contacts, if you only see a couple of AIS contacts in the summer nearby, you have a problem. If you're not seeing 12 miles out, that's where you should see. So you have to. So what happens is you get radio, get a piece of antenna to your mast to the antenna and up. And we had actually replaced one section, which significantly improved our connectivity, reception, and transmission capability, which is key when you're offshore. So we're not playing.
You're not seeing the AIS contacts, then people at that range on the VHF.
Yeah.
We're going to try this after. We're going to keep going with the presentation. I'll try to pull it up.
Okay. So rescue boat. So as I said, obviously very thankful to Kaylee. Couple things here. If you're going to receive these, if you're the first on-scene boat, key principle is you're the rescue coordinator. Okay, command and control. Mary's on the radio communicating what we need and the problem. The rescue boat is the controlling station for comms and direction. And part of that is the communication of, well, what's their status? What's their food, fuel, water status? Because ultimately, we took another 40-foot boat with 7 people, we populated 9 people with 2,000 additional pounds on it. And so there was some concern about food. We actually brought us a bag full of snacks, and we brought our water, as mentioned. Buddy boat concept. So the original plan was for us to get on Kaylee. We would divide up and do another life raft transfer to Banter. the upper ring of the life raft in the second to last transfer, because you're surging up against the boat, it impacted their swim ladder and punctured the upper ring. So the decision was made, right here, so the decision was made by Kaylee that you ain't going anywhere. You're stuck here with that one. But we did learn at the Naval Academy by the experts that actually the Winslow life raft, which only has 2 rings, with 1 ring punctured, actually can still sustain the 10-person crew if need be. So in hindsight, stuff the fact it probably could have, but it is. I was like, okay, I'm on this other boat. I'm not in charge anymore, and so forth.
Well, that's a good point too. They're not in charge anymore, so if you go to another boat, they're the skipper.
Yeah. Anything else here? Yeah. So Banter then became our buddy boat, right? We were now 16 people on a 40-foot boat with a 10-person life raft. So if something happened to them, and we'll talk about that in a moment, who's gonna help us out? So they stayed in close proximity for the remainder of the race. Next slide. So this is actually the upper bearing on Kaylee. So this is it's actually ours had a cover over it. Theirs is exposed. These are the 4 original bolts. So after about 2 hours of being on Kaylee, and I'm trying to sort myself out, right, trying to recover. Here, okay, get it there. And he's up here. 3 of the 4 bolts had sheared because the upper bearing is kind of moving. Why that is, you'll see some in the structural report, but clearly we put additional stress on the boat. The navigator, Andrew Halliburton, on that boat was our absolute hero. I mean, he got there, communicated with Mary, Johnny on the spot, good command and control. And then it was actually the 3 of the other 4 who are our heroes. There was a dad and 2 sons. Absolutely phenomenal seamanship skills, command and control, and experience. They were very, very clear when we came. When they finally connected us to their boat, it was very clear. Clip in here, and in the surge, they would pull it up. And actually, probably the only injury in the transfer was, you actually see if you look at one of Lydia's magazine articles, where beautiful smile face as we approach Bermuda because we finished now. There's a bruise on her arm from being pulled out of the life raft. That was the most significant injury, I think, in the whole event. And I will tell you, the other, they decided to continue racing, so that means they applied for redress. And so very quickly got off in racing. Hey, you guys go down below. We can't help, right? Because we can't clean up and offer food, but that was about it. So I made that decision, and I'll tell you that next 52 hours was the most miserable 52 hours of my life. Just trying to figure out what had happened, checking in with the crew, how you doing. There's PTSD, so to speak, with the whole event. Everyone's dealing with it differently. So I was talking to everybody, where were you? What'd you see happen? Because I tried to put together the piece of the puzzle of what happened. Lydia had that picture, and probably not 3 times in the afternoon that next day. Like, can you show that picture? Trying to figure out what happened. So, are you prepared? Thanks.
One thing about the J121 does have a aft bulkhead, so it has a watertight compartment back by that, where 122 does not.
I think we talked about this all already, so we'll go to the next one. Talk about the one thing, high level learning. What do you do with that life raft, right? So we actually had the EPIRB tied into it. Not thinking we're probably going to maybe do another life raft transfer, not knowing what to do with it. We're now on the boat, and EPIRB's in there, and obviously not going anywhere else. So what do you do with that life raft? So we actually punctured holes in it. It wasn't effective to pull it on board and take care of it. Actually, that EPIRB drifted with the life raft for a long period of time.
Lions tried to pick it up.
Yep, there were several people come across. So part of this is, how do you warn other boats of, hey, there's a derelict sailboat about to sink, so you don't hit it? You got this life raft hazard, come across. You'll see, I think in the next slide here, this is actually what's posted, hey, boat retired at base heavy flooding, our crew rescued, gives a position. This is this is the last position of Alliance at 0530. This is a picture at 0522. Another boat came across Alliance, that she's in a final state of sinking. So we actually carried 2 trackers in the back. So this is the last tracker position. And there's a picture when they came across our life raft, someone the next day. So I kind of say 1 race, 2 boats, and we got 3rd place. So this is us at the award ceremony up there with Kaylee being recognized for everything, and banter. So there's Eddie, there's Julia. So those
Connor,
yeah.
Bill's behind there.
So this is us before the race, and here's us at the end of the race with the new crew as we kind of integrated with them over.
So our shore crew, which was like 500, Melanie Doherty, Lisa Mullen, Lisa Schmidt, the mother of young Mary, they met us there. They had this together with the Royal Bermuda Yacht Club had this big spread for us, and they made these. The Stone Company made these beautiful wreaths. You can see in the upper picture, one for Banter, one for Alliance, and one for Kaylee. So we had just a phenomenal welcome.
So one thing we did do is, so there's this Hansen Award, U.S. Sailing, for recognizing, there's a criteria you can look at. So we wrote up both crew of Kaylee and the crew of Banter, and they got recognized with the Hansen Award. And this is us at Newport Yacht Club. This is actually RJ. He's the guy who's one of my heroes. Matt and Tori Gimple. You can see there. Bill Neller, everybody knows. So Bill. This is the other 2 crew and Jim from Kaylee. Next.
All right. Now what you've all been waiting for. What's in this? So this is it's a Sabre 426. We bought it down in Annapolis back in October. We probably looked at 26 boats as far away as Charlevoix, Michigan, Maine, Annapolis, you name it. We were looking a lot at J boats, J42s, J46s, J44s. Really wanted a J46. We really loved the one in Charlevoix, Michigan, but at this point in time, it was just too much of an ask for us to sail at home through Seaway or Erie Canal, visit your family. But so she's up at NEB. She'll be over at Naval Station Newport in the summer. We plan to sail a lot around New England this year, Maine and Canada the following year, and who knows where next. That's her Spinnaker. The Centurion, prior owners named it. He's a USC grad, Trojan. They bought it for the 50th birthdays, and we renamed her Minerva. Minerva is the Roman goddess of wisdom and warfare strategy and tactics. Obviously, both Navy affiliated and how important strategy and racing. So, we got, Eric calls it, it's going to have a fierce howl right here. GT3 graphics. I always get the name wrong. We're going to put it on for us like they did before. They're great if you need a boat wrap or graphics added to it. So, and we say we're cruises, but guess what? The first thing we're doing is a Pagawi. One party tree.
It's a fast-paced party.
That's where we first met Caitlin.
So this is Lydia Mullen. Some of you met her 2-ish years ago, whatever it was. So we just have the links there. I think we have the presentation. But what I think Mary and I both appreciate is we're both kind of practical, stoic, engineer types. And Lydia's writing just brings a total different element. And I actually had a work colleague who's an engineer. She goes, "Yeah, Eric, you told me what happened when you got back, and then I read that story and I broke down crying." So, and if you listen to it, you can actually click on a link and you can listen to her read it. That's even more impactful. She's got me crying a couple times. But
and she was Cole Brower's media manager. Oh, any questions? So this is the book before we start. So this is the 2 years ago, this is obviously many of you know what we're based on what we're holding in our hands. This is a finish of an Ida Lewis distance race. You know, they deliver you Prosecco's and so, but we've got uh, this particular race, we had 5 of the Gimples with us, right? So that was banter boats. We have um, Lindsay, 4, I'm sorry, Lindsay and Megan, and then Tori and Matt. We had 4 Gimples with us, and Lindsay and Megan also did Annapolis to Newport with us. So that's, the connection with them runs deep.
So with that, I think we got a few minutes for a couple of questions. Yes, sir.
If anyone wants to read it.
Is there anything you would have done differently in retrospect? On the boat, say physically on the boat.
Physically on the boat. So I've replayed that in my head many times. So one is I kind of mentioned, like, I did not consciously think about running the engine to charge the battery for longevity, and I didn't check the battery discharge rate, which I'm very conscientious of. I would have done that differently. I go back to everyone asks, like, what's plug the hole, right? Is there something we could have done to stabilize that rudder post? I don't think there's anything we could have done.
If we were like 50 miles offshore, would have maybe done different things. But just to get there and do something, it's a danger to people the way it's moving around. Here we are on the Gulf Stream, the conditions we're in, and we're halfway between here and Bermuda. So, yeah, we prioritize safety of life over safety of ship.
Just so we calculate how much time you had.
Obviously, we had a little more time. So if you look at that timeline, we abandoned ship at 0340, and it was just shy of 2 hours when she actually sank. I did at one point. Mary went topside, and I heard radio call from Kaylee, and this is where I was like, I'm not. Where's the water level relative to the battery and so forth. I said, hey, I think we need to go in about 10 minutes. Probably could have got an hour, but when you go to safety at sea, it's always the standing conversation is always step up into a life raft. We actually stepped across to a life raft, but the concept is different. We were doing a life raft transfer, and they were there, we were here, everything's under control. So we made the decision to abandon ship and do that transfer. That helps.
Yeah, I'll play this while we take questions, but you can also go on YouTube and just Google Alliance, Bermuda race sinking, anything like that, and get this. You'll get probably Lydia's stuff. You'll get the interview that Kate, what's her current last name?
Kate Summers.
Kate Summers did.
Yes, sir.
Very truly, really good.
Because of the other boat having a problem with the upper fairing, did they determine that there was a structural design flaw for that boat?
I'll let you once the report comes out. I'll let you read these.
Okay.
So there is some. Learned a lot about upper bearings and so forth, but I'll let you read that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a flaw. Maybe the weak link, but I don't think it's.
It's also like, how does your rudder system fail, right? So we looked at a swan, and that boat design is that the rudder is frangible, as Mary calls it. It just breaks off, and that's so therefore that.
It sacrifices the rudder sacrifices.
We have a stainless steel stock, and that's what transfers that energy. So this is, like I said, the sea state. That's me trying to get the. So they use the heaving line to connect with this. So we had cut away the painter, right?
There's the 2 young guys.
Yeah. So Austin's driving. That's his brother trying to get me the line. The owner was actually using a throttle to help control the proximity. They were really good. They're really concerned about not compounding the problem. Got all their lines secured. Very conscientious of lines in the water. This is the third go around, which are actually successful in the connection. Yeah, I always love this. I popped my head up, put out my goalpost arms, and they were connected. They actually had to tie that off to a handhold on the life raft so that they had to actually winch us up because of the relative motion was so following the seaway. So you can see this bouncy motion. So in the surges, we'd actually kind of launch somebody up in a transom. So if you have a closed transom boat, you got to think about how you're going to do that. Right? So that's I think there's going to be some work done for some guidance on considerations in doing a life transfer.
What was the water temperature?
I was like 80 degrees, so we're in a Gulf Stream, right? But one thing to keep in mind is we actually lost, I think, 2 life jackets in the transfer.
2 life jackets, a whole 3, a whole set
So
of life.
yeah, the jackets, right? And there was one point I was looking at Connor, and he was because it was a wet boat, right? It was still a wet race. There's a wind, and he was got a little bit of hypothermia. And so even though you're in the Gulf Stream or south, you got to think about hypothermia and keep yourself closed. So this is us. Great reception we got in. Obviously a dialogue. This is Austin. Don't have his audio, but I love when he talks about looking into life raft. It gives him goosebumps. But anyway, great young man. Trust my life with him. Obviously, we all are thankful for.
Are you gonna do it again?
Am I going to do it again on somebody else's boat? Expect your boat for interview.
So the other thing is, whether or not you can out or not, we're considering maybe a transatlantic, but we'll do it with like a cruising company, whether it be, I don't know, CCA, Salty Dogs, some other organization. I don't want to do this. That's my only thing is,
Go in a herd, right? There's like the salty dogs, go in a herd south for the Caribbean and come back, right? Because when you're way out there, I mean, Coast Guard will do what they can, but they still have limitations, right? So if you're way out there beyond 200 miles, helo is not an option.
yeah, but obviously, there's, I forget the name of the system where the merchant ships, sign up. Yeah, anyhow, so it's not just those 2 options, there's also mermaids.
Yeah, Coast Guard will call one of those ships Mary referred to. There's like 6,000 in the system. If they're in proximity, they'll divert to support. So, I had a couple more questions. Yeah.
That video, right? I mean, it was kitted out with several little GoPros. And did you have video of the actual impact that the time?
Yeah. So we were part of one of 10 boats and hopefully a series you see in the near future. So we had a GoPro going on the mast, which is one you're referring to, and then you had another one that's mobile. We lost the second one in the transfer. There is a video of the impact, but that's not public release at the moment. We did get a couple of these for insurance released to us, which were also made public, but that one is not.
So yeah, the Bermuda race partnered with a production company that specializes in almost like extreme sports. And they outfitted 10 boats, and they hope to do a documentary series. Well, they created a documentary. I don't know how many are going to be in the series, and they hope that they're marketing it, and there was a lot of money contributed from the state of Rhode Island as well. They're hoping like Netflix or somebody picks it up. So our boat was one of 10, as well as the Calfelts, Sophia, and Banter. Just per chance that were part of the Hound was trying to think of some other boats, but that were had GoPros, and we were all interviewed beforehand, afterhand, and all afterwards.
Francis, to your point, that I've watched that video many times. It's dark. You see the boat bounce along. You hear this noise because it's still remote from. So it's a very, very different sound than what we heard down below. And you see the boat kind of do this 50-degree motion to the right, kind of the roundup motion, which we kind of automatically hook to. And then you hear some voice calm. So it's of limited value to see of anything, but other than captures the moment when it happens.
So we're really fortunate. Just because he was supposed to do the race, but his boat canceled, our insurance broke him and us on the dock. and actually filed our claim for us. So they did. They talked to a few members of the crew, but we had pictures and stuff. So we had obviously the picture of the boat sinking. So this really was no question. Our insurance paid out rather quickly. It was our broker had to work hard to find us insurance again. I think if we had bought another race boat and said we wanted to race, I don't know that we would have got the insurance. So.
And the key thing too was no injuries. That was one of the key questions, right?
And no other boats.
Yeah. And one thing I think we had a slide, but the key takeaway for y'all, we all love going out there on the water. We love the teamwork. We love the sunsets, the sunrises. There's moments when it gets gnarly out, but afterwards, it's a great story, over beer or a dark and stormy at the bar. Hey, we did that. We made it. It's like that Annapolis Newport race. We had trials and tribulations. We hove 2 for 3 hours. We got back. The crew recovered. We got back into racing, and next thing you know, we got second place. So we had a big swig of rum, at the awards party. So you got to keep that in mind. Why do you do it? You pay those boat bills, but the key thing is when you're out there, you just got to be ready, and you got to know yourself. You got to know your boat systems in and out. Like on Minerva now, I'm down there, like learning where twice as complex below, learning where all those valves are, where all the vulnerabilities, how to get access to the engine. So should in the future we have a similar occurrence, I know what to do from that, motor sensory skill piece. Gotta know your boat. If you don't, then off the truck. Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier something about the corrugated discharge hose for the pumps versus the collapsible. Did you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah. So when you read the reports, Gunga Din also had a similar type of emergency pump, which we had collapsible hose used for a long time, right? And when it goes up and over, it just kinks, right? Because it's collapsible. And they actually one guy was a doctor, so they put some sort of stick in it. We had young Schmitty holding it to make sure. So if you have a complete collapsible hose, you'll see in the report, just know how to use it. But we actually, Mary has a picture somewhere. For Minerva, we got these double 3700 pumps, and she found this 3-inch discharge hose, which is non-collapsible.
It's
accordion type. So that's what I would recommend. And actually, when we went to Safety at Sea at the Naval Academy, which is a little bit different group that does it here at CCA and at the college, they actually had an exercise where there's a pump, a hose going up over a ladder, and you had to hook the battery clips on. There's a 5-gallon bucket to go up and over. So if you have that, I recommend to you, just do that with your crew. Take that emergency pump, put it down here, find a battery, put a ladder so you get a 6-foot head, and just practice. How long does it take us to pump 5 gallons out of that Home Depot bucket into something else, right? And if you going up versus, so just practice with it. So very important.
I have a note to say about the closes because that was my job when we took the sails down. That was my job with close management, and our corrugated close was too short. It didn't actually reach from the bilge to the end of the boat. If we had to pump into the companionway, so if the water was ingress, again, it gets back to like we had the sling. If the ingress was forward, we would have been fine. We would have been coming into the back and moved on the boat. But because the ingress was coming from the back, we had to do like some weird maneuvering to try to get the hose up and out of the companionway.
You could just pump forward the transfer.
We couldn't because that's where the water was.
Because we're kind of like going down and up.
So it was like a little bit too short, and so I was kind of standing there like it was literally like this much of the hose was actually going to the side.
Just let it rain to be over transfer.
Well, I was just saying, the angle started getting.
Yeah. Very, but I meant super important if we had a closed transfer.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. If we had a closed transfer, that almost.
But the whole point, and you'll see it in the comment, is know where you're going to put that pump. Know how to use it. And if you have a complete collapsible hose, you're going to have to where you want it to discharge, is it long enough? And then two, is it gonna collapse or not? That's key. And a lot of boats, kind of on the type of, race boats are fairly slimly trimmed. Cruising boat, you don't necessarily need, you can have a more robust pump in your bilge, and make sure you know when your bilge pump is running, because that may hide a problem if it's running and you don't know it. And that's why I always pay attention to the discharge rate, or some boats have like a little light that goes on. Hey, why is that light coming on all the time? Or do you have a bilge alarm to tell you when it's starting not to catch up? That's a key point.
We had a paper logbook, right? So every 2 hours we log things. We had bilge people inspect the bilge, people check the bilge pump. We had battery start, charge, discharge. In addition to stuff like where you were that long, what the weather was, what the dew point was, water temperature was. We had a paper logbook.
So I think we're out of time. Getting the nod, but at least me personally, if there's I'm pretty passionate about safety and preparations. If you want me to, if you say, hey Eric, come down for a beer and take a look at blah, happy to do so. I always like meeting people in the community. I may actually come over and help with a little bottom work, but anyway, it's working on that today.
Yeah, especially if anyone here really knows more about ablative paint as opposed to the nice hard bottom that we had, race bottom.
Yeah, any last comments, man? Thanks for having us.